Yeah.
And I got to ask a guy, were the Olympics cool?
Well, you know who else you can ask, are the Olympics cool? He might not have an answer for it, but how about Shehan?
We go to his study, I suppose.
Yeah, study. I think that's the right word.
We're joined by Dave Campbell's Texas Football College Football Insider, Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan, welcome to the program. Do you think the Olympics are cool?
I think that the Summer Olympics are super duper cool, and I think the Winter Olympics are pretty cool.
Ooh,
Okay,
yeah.
hot
Yeah,
take.
But I will say that I do think that it depends on the event. Like event. Like bobsled is undoubtedly a cool event. Like that is there's nobody's saying that, but there are other things. It's like I don't know. But yes. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that with summer you get like the real breadth of events, and with winter, like you're right. You know, there are a couple of events that really stick out, but then you kind of just forget about them.
Shehan Jeyarajah, our college football insider, joining us. Okay, so we should probably get to some topics of the day, which is the SEC came out with a pretty seismic announcement yesterday about the future of their 2020 season. They're going to a 10-game conference-only schedule. Basically now, as far as Power 5 conferences are concerned, it seems like the Big 12 stands alone. Would you anticipate that there is a Big 12 announcement similar to that we can consider to be imminent?
Well, what I can tell you is that next Monday was supposed to be Big 12 Media Day, right? So, like, we were supposed to go in, we were supposed to interview all these coaches and hear everything. And at the last minute, after the SEC canceled theirs, they canceled Big 12 Media Days. So I think that we're going to see in the next couple of days, either this week or maybe early next week, I think we're going to see an announcement. In a lot of ways, I think the Big 12 was waiting for everybody else to make their decisions just to see what the landscape would be like. But now, I mean, it's do or die time, right? Like Oklahoma actually reports today because they have a week 0 game. And they'll be allowed to report even if they end up pushing that back just because of the way the rules work. But I mean, we're really getting to do or die time. There's supposed to be a meeting on Monday night about what's going on with the Big 12. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens.
Shehan Jeyarajah, our college football insider, joining us. So now I think there's a lot of ripple effects with the SEC moving, and now we would think something similar coming from the Big 12. Do you think it is now reaching a point where the FCS, which is in many respects, a lot of FCS programs are reliant on the bye games, the games where they get paid to kind of get fed to FBS teams, although they certainly get their share of scalps themselves. Is it fair to say that we may be reaching a critical mass where maybe it's in the FCS's best interest to move to the spring?
Well, that's something that we've seen, obviously, with other FCS conferences, with the SWAC and the Ivy League specifically, and the MEAC as well. And here's the deal, right? Like, you talk about FCS conferences. I was reading somewhere, and these are unconfirmed numbers, but I was reading somewhere that with North Texas's lost games, they're losing out on $1.4 million, right? And if North Texas is losing out on $1.4 million, they might want to cancel their bye games as well, with an FCS program. So there really is a trickle-down effect if the Power 5 decides not to play non-conference games. And I do think that it does make the decision easier for conferences like the Southland, conferences like, the Big East, all that sort of stuff, to move to the spring if potentially bye games are off the table.
Go ahead. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was one question I want to ask you now. Sorry, I got caught up. Sorry, man. We're in hour 3. It's only going to get worse.
It's only going to get worse. That's the worst part about it.
So I want to ask you now about the smaller classifications or smaller leagues, specifically Division II, because I think that the Lone Star Conference is in a really odd spot. Because the 2 non-Texas teams have already opted out. They've said that Eastern New Mexico and Western New Mexico have said, we're canceling the fall, we're going to try for the spring. That leaves only six teams left in the Lone Star Conference. In your opinion, and obviously, you don't get to make the decision. We wish you did, because then you could tell us. But in your opinion, is it viable for the Lone Star Conference to move forward with only 6 teams in the fall?
Well, here's the deal, right? And this is something that I think that has impacted the American Southwest Conference too, is, about half of the Division II conferences have decided to move to the spring at this point, right? So I think it's 11 of 23 at this time, with I'm sure more potentially around the corner. And when you look at the Lone Star Conference, the Lone Star Conference is one of the better conferences in Division II. Texas A&M Commerce, potentially a national title contender. And I think that one of the things we're going to wait and see is whether Division II decides to move all of its championships to the spring, right? I think that that's what the Lone Star Conference is really waiting on, is to see when the championships will be played. Because 6 teams, I mean, it can be done for sure. It can be done with 6 teams all in the state of Texas, but one thing that at the small college level that I think is getting ignored a little bit is how difficult these procedures are for schools that don't have the multi-million dollar resources, right? Like, they're not testing all the time necessarily. They're not doing all this. They're screening, but that's kind of the best that they can do with the resources that are available to them. So I think it's going to be a waiting process to see what other Division II conferences do. And if the NCAA ends up moving championships to the spring, I think that's going to play a big role in whether they end up moving as well.
Shehan Jeyarajah, our college football insider, joining us here on TFT1000. Get involved in the conversation. Hashtag TFT1000. All right, so you wrote, of the 400 pages in this magazine, you probably wrote 430 of them. So I'm going to put you on the spot because I know that you wrote 9 of the FBS previews. Is that right?
Yeah, 9.
9. Which one was your favorite to write?
Oh boy, my favorite to write.
Who does he want to make mad?
That's a really tough question. I mean, I will say I loved how, and this was true last year too. Texas Tech staff is always great with us, right? Like, we always get great interviews with them. They're very supportive of our brand. They really, I think, kind of get it. Matt Wells is a really great coach in terms of like kind of getting those sort of things. They're always a real pleasure to work with. Some of the others, I mean, I'm going to say like, SMU, obviously getting to work with them both on the cover story and their preview as well made it a really special year. Another staff that's really great, totally understands the brand and are very open and honest, which is something that I really like because you don't always get that, especially doing this. And the one other school that I'll mention is UTSA, getting to kind of talk to all of their new coaches. I really enjoyed my chat actually with their offensive coordinator, Barry Lunny, especially, and trying to figure out what exactly they're going to do since they didn't have spring. I think, again, they were very honest with us, and I think that it made for a really good section.
Okay, now I want to ask you a little bit about another question about the SEC that kind of just hit me is, so if the SEC is going to play a 10-game schedule, then obviously every team is going to add in 2 more conference games.
Right.
A&M, one of the reasons we really liked A&M this year was that their schedule seemed pretty okay, that they're 2. When you take a look at who they drew from the East.
Yeah, until the Mean Green came in.
Well, yeah, until the Mean Green. They ended up, I believe it was Tennessee, and it was South Carolina. Is that correct?
No, it's Vanderbilt in South Carolina.
Vanderbilt, like, kind of, I mean, I'd say it, but like even better. So now you're taking a look at who they could end up getting. Specifically, I would say Georgia or Florida. There's you have to assume that probably one of them. Is this, in the end, do you think that right now, and look, obviously things will change July 31st. Do you think that right now, from an A&M scheduling perspective, that this would be considered a net negative for their 2020 chances?
Oh, it has to be, because you look at, you mentioned it a little bit, but you're talking about 4 non-conference games, even though they had a game against Colorado. Colorado's in rebuilding mode, right? So that's 4 wins right there. And then you got the best draw possible from the East. You got, an SEC West that's largely rebuilding, which will still be the case. But now I think that Ross Dellinger from Sports Illustrated pulled together sort of the next group of opponents that would come up if they just decided to go with the next rotation. And so A&M would get Florida, right? Like, and that makes the schedule so much harder to have to go from playing, okay, you got you got Alabama, you got LSU, But if you can survive those games, you got a really good shot to win really everything. And those games are also winnable as well. So all of a sudden, oh man, you got maybe a top 8 Florida team potentially, that you're potentially playing. I think that, and even just the other thing too, is losing those 4 games means that if A&M had a good season, if they only lost 2 or 3 games, like that's a 7-3 season, an 8-2 season. It just doesn't feel as nice as if they were able to go and compete for 10 wins just because they're losing that non-conference slate. So I think that Texas A&M in a lot of ways is really one of the big losers of this whole decision.
All right, Shehan, before we let you go here, when you hopped on, obviously we've been in the spirit of remembering great TFT moments, and our guy Meese hit us up with what he called Shehan's iconic TFT line, directed at me. I think you'll remember it at the Thanksgiving pot, or the,
I don't remember
what do we call
this.
it, bracket? He turns to me. I remember it like it was yesterday. I loved ham for Thanksgiving, but then I grew up. And
Wow. Do you want to stand by this?
It was so funny.
Ham is great, but like as I've gotten older, like I definitely feel like it's very cured, it's very sweet, right? Like it just doesn't have the same appeal to me as it did when it was young, and then I've moved much more in a turkey and sides direction.
I'm not even gonna lie. I tried to find the clip of that for the montage of the greatest moments. I didn't find the time to get it, but we're gonna put some receipts on Twitter eventually of this one.
He's Shehan Jeyarajah. He's our college football insider, and he speaks truth to power. Keep spreading the good news about turkey and sides, and keep slandering ham, my friend. Appreciate you joining us, my friend.
Get out of here.
Power to the people.
There you go, Shehan Jeyarajah, our college football insider, joining us here on TFT 1000.